Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. Very, very excited to be able to have just a phenomenal guest on today, Perry Marshall, and to visit more with him about some of his work in the last 7 or 8 years. I shouldn't say work in the last 7 or 8 years. It's been a lifetime. But one of his published books as it relates to the 80-20 principle and rule. Before we get into that, this episode, as they all are, is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. We're growing, hopefully, just like you all are growing. We do it through different mediums as it relates to either direct mailers, PPC, SEO, just really the old-fashioned way of taking great care of customers and having them refer in a variety of different ways. Most recently, in the last 36 months or so, we've had a tremendous amount of success in purchasing other pest control companies, not just here locally in Arizona, but nationally, wherever we've got a branch. And there's about 25 branches today, and we usually add 3 or 4 every single year. And so if you know anybody that's in the pest control space, that's looking to exit, looking to sell, we'd love to be able to talk to them. You can pass their information to me directly, or if you happen to be one of those people, call or text me directly. The number is 480-254-9730. And we would appreciate that. Perry Marshall founded the Evolution 2.0 Prize, staffed by judges from Harvard, Oxford, and MIT. He aims to solve the number one mystery in artificial intelligence and the origin of life itself. He is a published scientist. He is endorsed in Forbes and Inc magazine and is one of the most expensive business consultants in the world. Clients in 300 industries value his capacity to integrate sales, technology, art, and psychology. His reinvention of the Pareto Principle is published in Harvard Business Review and NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs at the California Institute of Technology. Uses his 80-20 curve as a productivity tool. His Google AdWords book laid the foundation for the $100 billion pay-per-click industry. He served as an expert witness for search advertising litigation. He has a degree in electrical engineering and lives with his family in Chicago. Perry, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Hello to Arizona from Chicago, and we're going to have a good time today.
We're going to have a great time. Thank you so much. I kind of confided just before the show started in Perry that I was introduced to him through a mutual friend and acquaintance, Jeremy Weiss. And before that, I hadn't been very, very familiar with Perry's work. And in the course of the last month, as I did more homework, hopped onto his site, perrymarshall.com, and learned more about some of his other works, I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? This guy is serious and a big deal. And so thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited to be able to talk today. When your assistant sent over some of the topics for your 80-20 book and kind of the ideas that come out of that, I don't know that I could land on one. I mean, and I'll just read a couple of them. Confessions of a Complexaholic. I feel like I can relate to that. Excel by elimination. I mean, I love that. Doing more by doing less. And then multiply by subtracting. And so one of, first of all, I guess, Perry, for you, I mean, where did some of these ideas come from? Was it solving a problem for you, or how did all of this come about?
Well, let me tell you a quick story that kind of encapsulates this, and I'll give you some background. So my friend, John Paul Mendoza, when he was 17, he dropped out of high school and he hitchhiked to Las Vegas because he wanted to be a professional gambler. And his mom was thrilled, as you can imagine. So he's in Vegas and he's gambling for a living. And he's like, this is a little harder than I thought it was going to be. And he went to a gambling bookstore and he's roaming around. He's like, okay, where's the secret? What do I need to get better at? And he gets into a conversation with this other guy named Rob. And he finds out that Rob runs a professional gambling ring. And And he says, so do you think you could teach me some of your wisdom? And Rob says, for a percentage of your winnings, I could teach you some of my wisdom. And so they shook on it and they made a deal. And so after they shook hands, Rob's like, jump in the Jeep, John, we're going for a ride. So they're riding down the highway and John goes, so how do you win more poker games? And Rob goes, you have to play people where you're going to win and they're going to lose. You don't want other professional poker players. You want the guy from Wichita who's 18 years old, just got his grandmother's inheritance money, and he thinks he's going to get rich and lost wages. You want that guy. And John goes, where's that guy? And he goes, let me show you. Let me show you a room full of marks. And they pull into a parking lot and they walk into a strip club, and there's women and music and rock and roll and people drinking and all this stuff. And Rob sits John down at a table and he pulls out a sawed-off shotgun, which he carried everywhere he went. And he holds it under the table and he opens the chamber and he slams it shut and it goes, and it makes this, they call it racking the shotgun, and it makes this noise. And remember, we're in a loud, noisy club. There's like guys over in the corner wearing, leather and biker, and they're like, hey, who made that sound? They're reaching for their guns. And the owner comes over. He goes, hey, what's going on over here? And Rob goes, it's all fine. We're just teaching the lad a lesson. We're not going to do any damage or anything. John, did you see those biker dudes that turned around when they heard that noise? And John goes, yeah. And he goes, don't play poker with them because they're not marks.
Yeah.
Play poker with everybody else. Now, that story is marketing 101. Rack the shotgun. Everything you do in marketing is racking the shotgun. You send the email and some people open it and some people don't. And some people click and some people don't. Some people sign on the webinar and some people don't. Some people subscribe to the podcast and some people don't. Some people buy from the webinar and some people don't. Some people like your post. Some people share the post. All of it is racking the shotgun. And whether it's you racking the shotgun or just watching what happens when somebody else racked the shotgun, this is going on all the time. Now, you said, what's the background here? Most of the time, when you rack a shotgun of any kind, it's 80-20. Now, it could be 70-30, it could be 90-10. The exact ratio isn't the point, okay? The point is there is a symmetrical, there is a, like this weird inverse cause and effect. 20% of the people buy 80% of the stuff, and 80% of the people buy 20% of the stuff. And it could be shotgun shells, or it could be poker games, or it could be watches. Or last week, I was at a seminar in Atlanta and I did shoes. The one person in the room had 160 pairs of shoes. I've been in rooms where the max was 800. One time I spoke at a seminar, somebody owned 5 million domain names. It's highly, highly disproportional, more than people realize. And now I had a clue, like a tiny little clue about this. About 20 years ago, I was a sales manager in a little hardware software company, and I read in a book somewhere that 20% of your customers give you 80% of your sales, and the other 80 only give you 20. And I thought, is that right? And I printed out a QuickBooks report and I went through line by line until I convinced myself, I'll be darned.
It's right.
It's true. Well, but then I never really asked why. And I didn't really think very hard about what it meant. It meant all kinds of things. But it was only like 5 years later, I read a book by Richard Koch, and it suddenly like exploded into my awareness of what was really going on here. So what was really going on here? So first of all, 80-20 is not some random fact that happens to be true about most sales reports. Or if you go back 100 years when it was originally discovered, it was real estate and wealth. And a guy named Pareto figured out, hey, guess what? I could look at Italy, I could look at France, Germany, UK, whatever country. It's always like the wealth is 80-20. Well, this is actually a fundamental law of cause and effect. This is like craters on the moon and branches on a tree and traffic on the roads near your house. It is almost universally true everywhere. And there are scientific reasons why that I don't think we really need to get into. But the other thing was, and this was what just blew my circuits, is it's fractal. Now, fractal is a really propeller head word that most people don't use every day, but all it means is a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. Okay. So a tree, there's a tree across the street that's 50 feet tall and it's got that branching pattern. But if I go look at individual twigs, the leaves are still branching. And if I get a microscope and I look at the leaves, they're still branching. So a tree has a fractal repeating pattern over and over and over again. And what I realized, like suddenly one day, like a bolt of lightning, is, wait a minute, 80-20 is just like that. There's an 80-20 inside the 80-20 and another one and another one and another one. And I was like, holy cow. This might be the most important thing I ever learned about business right now. It's that 80-20 has this pattern and a pattern and a pattern. And again, it might sound kind of propeller head, like depending on how much of a numbers person you are. But this pattern is in every Facebook account, every Google account, every spreadsheet, every direct mail campaign, every social media thing, every marketing, every product returns report, every product defect log, every support ticket log. This is everywhere. And it means that there's these levers, these incredibly powerful levers. They're invisible to most people. And you can tweak them and you make enormous improvements on a business with relatively little effort. And guess what? You find out I've been wasting most of my time. And so that's 80-20.
And so, Perry, is it really? So you bring up Richard Koch. I watched a thing that you did with him maybe 5 or 6 years ago. As far as personal efficiency, or at least as far as his work / home life, personal life balance, he seems to be one that's fanatical about it and has gotten that really down to a science. I mean, I think this interview was probably 6-7 years ago, and he didn't start doing it the day that you two shot this. But he said, and you talk about that, he's down to 1 hour a day. He works 1 hour a day, and he's got this specific set of rules, and he wakes up at 7:30 and does he kind of has this routine. And so kind of an interesting piece there.
I've known Richard for about 8 years or so. And when I first got to know Richard, he was worth $200 million. He's now worth $1 billion. I can personally attest that he works about an hour a day most days, like running his business and his investments. He's an equity investor, which is, being an investor, it sounds kind of romantic. Man, it's a shark pit, man. And a lot of investors lose their ass, okay? And so when you have an investor who's quintupled his net worth in the last 8 years and whose investment portfolio rivals Warren Buffett's in terms of return on capital.
You listen to that guy.
And he doesn't have a staff. I mean, he's got a guy named Ricardo who picks up his mail and takes care of stuff. He doesn't have a platoon of MBAs. He does his investment calculations on a 20-year-old Hewlett-Packard financial calculator. and he uses a lot of intuition, and he uses the 80-20 principle and the STAR principle to choose his investments. And I've spent a couple of weeks living at his various houses, and I can attest he really does work less than 2 hours a day. And most of his day is spent doing things he thinks are interesting, like writing books and researching things and being on Twitter and commenting on politics and whatever he wants to do. But he's like the extreme 9th degree black belt of 80-20. And in fact, when I did a seminar with him in 2014, it was a $7,500 a head seminar. We had 80 primary people in the room who literally did pay that much money. And I got criticism from other gurus. I had one of them came after me because my sales copy was like, most gurus are paddling really, really hard, and they're telling you how to like make a lot of money without working, and they're like going a million miles in the squirrel cage. Well, Richard is not. So maybe you should listen to this guy. So it's been a very interesting journey learning things from Richard. And I think 80-20 is like, it's the most deepest thing that looked like ridiculously simple that you just about ever stumbled across.
So Perry, you've been doing this forever. You're certainly no novice. As it relates to personal efficiency, as you've either consulted over the years or provided different advice or different counsel, I mean, where do you find, and this is kind of a blanket generalization thing, but the average person, I mean, where does their time go? I know that you are very well versed, obviously, in social media and just time wasters. There's a couple of people that use social media. They're either using it as a tool, they're using it to save time, make money, but the large majority use it for social purposes, and it wastes a lot of time. I mean, the average person, where does all of that time go? What are they doing? I mean, what would you say to them to consider, in their life?
So I want you to consider this. In the last year, you made half of your money in a week. And you made the other half of your money in the other 51 weeks of the year. And this is true of just about everybody, even if they were a receptionist at a dental office and is not even self-employed. 50% of the money that she made for her company, she made in 1% of her time. And 50% of the money you made in 1% of your time. And it's just that you never really thought about it. But it's like, well, you have this one product and you got done developing it 7 years ago, and all you got to do is put it in a box and ship it, and somebody else puts it in the box, and it's 25% of your revenue, and the orders come in and you never touch it, and it made a quarter of your money, and it didn't take any of your time. And you got this other project that sucked months of your time and didn't make a dime. And the money you made last year, it was like, well, I did this deal on this day, and I did this other deal that one afternoon, and I had that one Zoom call with that guy. And I had this other customer that called up and wanted to buy a bunch of stuff. And that's like half your income. And then the rest of the year was basically filler. And not only that, here's the depressing part. A month of last year, you actually went backwards with your effort, not forwards. It actually dug you deeper in the hole. You shouldn't even done it. So like I gave a keynote to a bunch of certified public accountants a few years ago. And I said, how many of you have that client? They finish their tax return on April 16, and they pummel you with emails, and they bring this like giant crate full of papers and receipts. They're only paying you like $300, and it takes you 15 hours to do their tax return. You end up like I don't know, you must be making like $4 an hour doing this tax return. How many of you have that client? And like
everyone's hand shot up. Everyone's hand shot up.
I said, you know what? There was no law of the universe that on the day that they were born, that you were born with a responsibility to do their taxes. Okay. It wasn't like stamped on your butt, when you came out of your mother's womb. Like you have a choice. There's no reason why you can't send that client a letter and say, it's been really nice doing business with you, but we have had a board of directors meeting and we're changing direction and we're letting some clients go onto other opportunities and we're going to introduce you to a different CPA firm, and you just move them along. Now what you're really doing is firing a client, but you don't have to be mean about it. And the truth is that at least 5 or 10% of everybody's clients are losing them money, and nobody's admitting it. And 5 or 10% of the products that you sell in your product line are losing you money. And guess what? 10% of your employees are costing you 5 times what you pay them. That girl, that guy that never can quite get it right and you're always having to fix stuff. It costs you 4 or 5 times what you're paying them in terms of other staff's time, them making bad decisions. They don't bill a client properly. They overpay a client. I had a bookkeeper who left a few years ago, and I figured out a year after she left that she overpaid a contractor by $50,000. And nobody noticed. This happens all the time. Okay, so the bottom 10% of your business, in many respects, bottom employees, bottom customers, bottom product lines, highest failure product that you sell that has a defect or something, they're losing you money. And you make more money just not selling, not letting the employee come to work, not selling to the client, not shipping the product. You're taping dollar bills to every box. This is everywhere. This isn't just those people. No, it's you.
It's all over. I believe you, and I know that that's true. But what do you tell people? So I think that there's a couple of different sorts of people, right? There's people that have no idea and they're just doing it, running the business the way that they're running it, whatever else. But then there's the people that know and aren't doing anything about it. What do you say to those people then, Perry? Oh, she's been here for this long, or it was just one mistake last month, or what do you tell them about that product line or that employee or group of employees, or what's the hard truth?
So there's really a question. Is your company a socialistic, familial, little tribal thing where you're just there to take care of everybody? Or is it a high performance team where everybody has to earn their place? Now, you get to decide. It's your business. Okay, if you want to run a business where you see your role in the world as employing people that maybe other people wouldn't employ, then God bless you. But if that's what you're doing, you are repelling top players, because top players do not want to work in a company like that. They won't stay working in a company like that. And B players attract C players, which attract D players, which attract F players. And a lot of us, look, I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm a salt of the earth kind of guy. Okay. I grew up in church, God loves everybody, all of that. Okay. And I still believe all that. But I do not, in business, you're not doing people any favors by subsidizing mediocre work. And there is a lot of mediocre work. There is a lot of mediocre workers. So the question is, do you want to run a company of nice egalitarian people, or do you want to run a company of high performers and superstars? And you have to decide. And frankly, I think there's so many, look, the post office is running the familial, if people can't work, they go get a government job. There's a million of those. I don't think we need any more people to be doing that. I think if you're an entrepreneur and you have skills, you better get your butt in gear and get your skills to the highest level you can, get the best team you possibly can. Oh yeah, and with all the taxes we're going to be getting in the next few years from all of these, government, I don't even have to go into it. Okay, you better have a quality team. Okay, and at the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about, hey, we buy pest control companies. Well, I never met you before today, but I can bet you buy these companies, you get rid of the bad employees, you get rid of the bad product lines, you do an 80-20 on the bad and the good, and you throw out a lot of bad, and I bet you chop a third of the garbage out of those companies when you buy them. Am I correct?
You couldn't stay in business if you didn't. Yeah, you couldn't stay in business if you didn't, whatever business it is, whether it's pest or whatever else. And also, I like what you said, Perry, too, about they can go get government jobs. And everyone else can feel good about that because of the taxes that we're paying to pay their wages there. So you can either have a larger loss in your own company or pay your taxes, feel good about having your mail sorted and filed and whatever else. So you're paying their salary or wage one way or another.
It is better to pay people to be on the dole and do nothing than come into your company and ruin it.
Appreciate that. Another topic here that I wanted to jump into. So you state in your book, or there's a topic that relates to 4 kinds of work. One's necessary for your health, 2 are highly productive, and 1 will rip you into pieces. I want to know about the health, the 2 that are highly productive. Which is the one that will rip you to pieces, I think, is probably what's on everyone's mind.
So when I started working with Richard Koch and we started telling people, you're actually working too hard. Now we're talking to like workaholics and perfectionists and entrepreneurs and people who, quite frankly, they want to work all the time because they like their work and they like their companies. And I'm one of those people. Okay. I kind of never stop. But I started to realize that only having one word for work, it becomes really confusing because there's different kinds of work. And so we came to the realization that there's 4 kinds of work. And so I'll go through them one by one. So the first kind of work is what I call work ethic. And work ethic is, if you're an attorney who bills $300 an hour for a certain kind of client, you're in your chair, you're doing the work for that client, it's the right kind of client, it's the right kind of law case, and you're billing them and they're getting the value and everything's great and you're efficient and you went to the classes and you got your education and it's all in the groove. Okay, that's what I mean by work ethic. Whatever it is you do, it's like doing what you do best and getting paid for it. That's work ethic. All right. Then there is what I call sweet life, which is, I believe everybody should take at least a day off every week. I do not believe in working 7 days a week. I think you are less effective working 7 than 6 or 5 because you're not recharged and you're not at your best and you're neglecting your family and all that. So that's a second quadrant of work. Okay, then the third quadrant of work is the one that rips you apart. And I call it barnacles. Here's what barnacles looks like. I'm not really exactly sure what I'm supposed to be doing right this minute, so I'm just going to hit refresh on my email box. Or I'm not really following my to-do list, and I didn't really 80-20 my to-do list today, and so I'm kind of drifting around. So I I'm on Twitter for a while. Okay. People have no idea how much time they chew up with this. We do a program called 30-Day Reboot where we say, if you're a member of this program, you're going to delete the social media apps off your phone. And you're going to do no social media during your workday. And you're not going to do any social media until you can do it after dinner, fine. But you're going to do it on your computer and you're not going to do it on your phone. And like every time you're at the dentist office and you got a couple stray minutes, you're not going to get on Facebook. People are like, oh my word.
It's as if you were asking them to donate a child.
Well, so first it's like, I don't know if I can do this. Then they do it and they're like, dude, I got all kinds of time. Like I got all kinds. Yes, you actually do when you're not chewing up every little minute. And the thing about that is it doesn't chew up your time. It chews up your mental focus and your mental energy. If your mental energy is busy being pissed off about the pandemic or this politician or that politician or the latest scandal or whatever, your problem-solving machinery is getting chewed up when, like, it's like, I don't know, your amygdala can't, like, deal with all of that input, okay? So I call that whole department of basically low level, maybe mildly valuable, but really not that valuable, habitual, almost like obsessive compulsive ways of spending your time. I call that barnacles. And barnacles rips you apart. And most people literally start barnacles at like 6:45 in the morning. They pull a device into their bed and they start the death scroll. All right, your day is already headed into the toilet and your feet have not even hit the floor. Okay, so that's barnacles. That's the worst way to spend time. I think most people spend 5 hours a day in barnacles.
And that's what I was going to ask. You said, when we start this program with people, normally they have no idea how much time that they're wasting. But you do. And I'm glad that you answered that question. So in an 8-hour workday, you would suppose then that probably, or maybe just in a day period that they're awake, they probably spend about 5 hours a day. Barnacles, don't know what to do. I'm going to surf this. I'm going to check that. I'm going to death scroll here. And that's what that looks like.
Right. And it's all in just these little, it's scattered all over the place in these little, and it seems kind of important. It seems kind of valuable. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I checked my email because I nipped that little crisis in the bud, and it kind of sort of feels productive. But basically at the end of the day, you go, where'd the day go? And what did I get done? And you don't have any time to actually think. I think everybody should spend an appreciable amount of time just thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Without any obligation whatsoever to look busy or be busy or do anything or respond to anybody. Now, there's a fourth kind of work that I call Renaissance time. And Renaissance time, there's kind of two versions of it. One version is, it's the thinking time that I just talked about. I roll out of the bed, I don't get on social media, I get my cup of coffee, I sit down, maybe I go to the park bench, maybe I sit on my porch, maybe I turn on some music, but I'm gonna drink my coffee, I'm gonna write in my notebook, I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna get my mind right. I'm going to think about, what am I doing today? What am I grateful for? Oh, I pushed a 3-year-old on the swing yesterday and it was so wonderful. And yeah, you spend some time in gratitude Some people might call this mindfulness. I think it's incredibly important. That's one kind of Renaissance time. The other kind of Renaissance time is unpredictable exploration that you give your permission to do, self permission, and it may be productive. The way I think of it is 5% of the time it'll be a home run, and most of the time it won't turn into anything. It could be a lunch with a friend of a friend. Like I don't even know this guy, and I don't know the first guy all that well, but I know that like talking to the friend of the distant friend once in a while turns into an incredibly valuable conversation. Like that's what you are to me. You knew Jeremy. I don't even know how well you know him, but he knows me, and he introduced me to you. And like those kind of conversations are occasionally really powerful. And conversations with your closest friends and colleagues almost never have a huge amount of leverage because they're very predictable. And so that's Renaissance time. And so 80-20 gives you this whole other way of thinking about time. Like most people go, life is short. I want to challenge that. Life is not short. Life is long. Life is full of minutes and seconds and hours and days. And most people are frittering them away. Most people are killing time. And the only reason that they don't get at least half of their bucket list knocked out is they didn't even try. They were doing the death scroll. But then all of a sudden they're 78 years old and they're like, where did it all go? Well, frankly, you wasted about 80% of it doing who knows what. It's your fault, not anybody else's fault.
So I love the idea, Perry, of Renaissance time. I never really considered it in that word or in those terms. Earlier today, Daniel Marcos of the Growth Institute was on the show too. And I don't know why over the last couple of years, morning routines or morning rituals has become a hot topic. I mean, it's been around forever since people were waking up in the morning. But for some reason, it's just a thing. Would you be comfortable sharing yours?
Yeah. So I wake up, I usually take a shower, get a cup of tea, brew a tea, and I sit down, I turn on music, and I journal for an hour. And then I start my day. Now, to most people, they go, an hour? Oh my goodness, what do you do? Well, I've cultivated that. I think a lot of people, it would probably be pushing them to do 10 or 15 minutes, which I think you should. Like, I think you should try this. I insist you should try this. Tomorrow morning, don't check your email. Don't do social media. Don't text your friends. Don't do any of that. Sit down with a notebook and get yourself sorted out. Pray, do some inspirational reading. If you had an idea in the shower, write the idea in the shower. If you've got thoughts about what you're going to do the rest of the day, kind of get it all sorted out. Make your list of things you want to do and decide what you actually shouldn't be doing and circle the highest leverage stuff. Do that and then start your day. It will make an enormous difference to the way your whole day goes. And I push all of the lower value stuff to the end of the afternoon. And I make sure that I'm doing my highest value stuff in the morning after I do my meditation time. And this is the complete backwards of what most people do. Most people, they start with the easiest, most trivial stuff, and the most important stuff gets saved till the end, and then they get to it when they're at the lowest energy and they're tired and their creativity is spent, and then they wonder why they're stuck 5 years later doing the same stuff.
So Perry, what is the psychology behind that? Having that hour, I mean, if you're not used to doing it for an hour, start with 10 to 15 minutes, like you said. You perhaps are doing it right now for an hour. Some other people might be doing it for 2, but what is the psychology behind spending that time that's quiet with oneself and having that make an impact on the rest of your day? What's behind all of that?
So the way that I experience is it's like putting on my armor. It is starting in the most proactive space that I can, which is what's most important to me right now. What are my priorities? Here's a big one. What questions do I currently not have answers to? And this includes listening to the muse, listening to God, some people would say the universe, but listening to your own intuition, listening to your own inner voice. I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are talking about morning routines lately, because I've noticed that too, is because most people's device-centric, work and email box-centric life isn't working. And they're stressed out, and they're unhappy, and they're fighting with everybody, and they don't know why. They can't see the label on the bottle because they're on the inside of the bottle. And what they've lost touch with is you can't listen to everybody else and yourself at the same time. And most people don't even know how to listen to themselves, and they don't know what their own feelings are. They don't know their own opinions. They get into an argument on social media about some political thing. It's not even their opinion. It's not even your opinion. It's an opinion somebody gave you that you heard yesterday. And they told you what to think, and you don't even know they're telling you what to think, and you don't even know what you think because you never ask yourself. You can't do great creative work when you're in that kind of a mindset. It's impossible. You're just going to be a robot. So we've gone from being industrial age robots to being information age robots, but we're still robots. And all the knobs and dials are being twisted by people behind the scenes at Google and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and whatever. And I think people have no idea the degree to which that is being manipulated and tilted one way or the other. It's very easy to do. I understand search engines. I understand algorithms. I understand this stuff. I'm an electrical engineer. I know how to write code. I mean, I've owned software companies. I know how this works. You have no idea how much you're manipulated. So the most sacred space that you have every day is your own. So take it. Wait, you're just going to give it to other people because they make you feel guilty? Because, I don't know, somewhere in school, you got this idea that your job is to look busy? Stop trying to look busy and be productive instead, and do your best work and your best excellence instead, that is not accomplished by being busy 10 hours a day. And the more you want to make, and the more you do make, and the more responsibility you have, the more time you have to spend thinking about what you're doing and not doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I turned on talk radio on the way to work today for the first time in a long time, and it quickly reminded me of why I don't listen to talk radio on the way to work. But this woman was talking about a pretty hot topic as it relates to gender. And I don't want to say indifferent, but it was fascinating to sit back objectively and listen to how excited or upset she was getting about this situation that played out in some town wherever else, and kind of projecting that onto the audience. And I found myself saying, well, is that the way that I feel? And I said, it's actually not. Why is she so excited? You know what I mean? And so it was, and that was a 10-minute, 15-minute commute to work, a small piece of some AM clip about this topic. And I thought, wow, I could have been better spent in silence or listening to classical music and just pondering. So I'll probably turn it back on in 4 or 5 months, after I forgot that I've learned my lesson. Transitioning, Perry, just a little bit to maybe business, another idea or concept is easy ways for any small business to increase revenues by 30% and profits by 60%. Is this similar to Cameron Herold's double double? What are some of the ideas behind that? And I mean, I'm sure anyone listening that owns a business, whether it's doing a dollar a year in sales or $100 million in sales, would love to learn more about that.
Most small businesses are not working the top of the 80-20 spectrum. They're working the middle, and they're thinking in terms of average. So I call it the principle of the $2,700 espresso machine. So 80-20 says 80% of your money wants to come from 20% of your customers, and 2/3 of your money wants to come from 5% of your customers, and half the money wants to come from 1%. And it will, if you engineer it that way, it'll happen easily. And so if you own a coffee shop and you sell 1,000 $5 lattes every week, that's $5,000 of lattes, right? 80-20 says it's pretty much a law of physics that one of those 1,000 people will spend $2,700 on an espresso machine. The money, they have the money, it's burning a hole in their pocket. They're going to spend it somewhere, and they want to spend it on coffee related something. And it's just about as predictable as rain. And most people don't know this. Okay, so if you go to Starbucks and you look at what they sell, it's like, well, they got like this $300 espresso machine. And yes, in fact, they have a $2,000 espresso machine. And if you were able to look at their books, you'd find out, oh, yeah, like for every $5,000 of lattes, they do sell, $2,500 worth of espresso machines. And you just start adding those upsells in there, and you're automatically looking at 50% to double the revenue, and easily an even greater proportion of profit. And what you find out is at Starbucks, the lattes just keep the lights on, and all the profit is from the espresso machines or like these other things that they sell that are high margin. And like a business that doesn't know that, well, you'll be the struggling coffee shop that so I know people that own coffee shops, and they're like, every time I see somebody pouring some of that cream into their coffee, I know the cream is more expensive than the coffee was. And that just hurts. It's like, well, yeah. Well, if you're only getting $3.50, of course you're not making money, right? Like you need an espresso machine. And so the easiest way for any freelancer or small business consultant or, most companies under 10 employees, is there something they should be selling that's 3 to 10 times more expensive than what you're currently selling, that you don't need new customers. The existing ones will buy it just because it's available.
Incredible. Thank you. Final question as we kind of round this out. I mean, as far as people looking to detox, declutter, dominate, I love that. It's the shortest book you've ever written, but I loved reading that. There were some really powerful illustrations in it, and there were some really, just loaded with value. There's a lot going on right now in people's lives as it either relates to a giant political race that just ended, the pandemic that some people are doing better than ever and some people are doing worse than ever. On top of all of the hot political topics that are out there and just all of it. I mean, where would you either point people, or how would you suggest that people start to detox or declutter or simplify their lives so that they can dominate it? There it is.
I suggest that you pick up this book. It's called Detox, Declutter, Dominate. It's about $9 on Amazon. It's 36 pages. It's very dense. Funny story about this book. A year and a half ago, it was a 150-page book. And my friend and colleague, Robert Scrobe, said, Perry, he asked me for the manuscript and he was helping me with it. He sent it back to me. He goes, Perry, I 80-20'd your book. I chopped it down to 8,000 words. You didn't need the other 80%. And I'm like, dang. But that's what this book is. It's a book that originally was going to be 180 pages. It's 36 pages. And it's like the 80-20 guide to making a business that is highly profitable, does not consume a huge amount of time, and has a moat around the castle, which I think is the most important thing in business. The most important thing in business is the barrier to competition. You need to build a business that other businesses, maybe they think they can compete with you. Maybe they even think it's going to be easy, but when they try, they find out it's really, really hard. And so in that book, we go through 7 specific, they're all based on 80-20, 7 specific things that you can do. This is really the kind of book that you read every 2 months for the rest of your life. And you just go through, and it will improve your business every time you go through. And every time you go through it, you'll be in a different place than you were before, because it's eternal principles. It's not like, this is not stuff that's going to go away in 5 years or change. It
was applicable 100 years ago. Now in 100 years, it'll still be relevant.
Yep.
Incredible.
So, Declutter, Dominate. It's on Amazon.
Perry, thank you so much. Thank you for spending time with my audience and with myself today. Everyone, go check out Detox, Declutter, Dominate. Head to perrymarshall.com. Like I said, it was overwhelming for me, and I kind of wondered, what have I got myself into as I was, introduced by Jeremy, and then learned more about Perry. And it was really humbling just to see so many free resources, and just being so liberal with advice and tools that can help you in your personal life, in your business life, to not just be more productive, make more money, but at the end of the day, just be a better human being and more effective, so that we can improve the quality of people's lives. So thank you so much for being on, Perry. Really appreciate that.
Hey, thank you very much, Austin. And I'm really glad we spent this time. Thank you.
Of course. Everybody, thank you for listening. Create a great day. We'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.